cutting edge guests, awesome, uncensored, jaw-dropping information, plus funny memes, good deeds, and loads of laughter. Kind of have it all. Ladies and gentlemen, if your soul is awake, then welcome, because you're in the right place. G'day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Sovereign Soul Program, a show which stands for love, levity, and liberty, because after all, love is the most powerful force in this universe, and laughter's the best medicine, especially covering all topics, all matters, ancient, current, quantum, and crypto, right? I am your host, Brad Wozny. We have an incredible show for you today with one of the top cryptocurrency wizards and attorneys in America, but cryptocurrency wizards in the world, named Jimmy Valley. And we'll get there in a moment with his introduction and whom he is and how the information he's about to impart on you could literally have a direct and very powerful impact on your financial portfolio and your life and those of your loved ones and those around you, because he is a guy who's been there and done that. And I'm so grateful to have him on, and he's a buddy as well. So I've had a great, fortunate experience to get to know him over the last year in a personal environment and also in business. Now, I trust some of this information to you is something that you want to share with the world, because you see, my soul's purpose in life is to help uplift humanity's consciousness with song and story. So therefore, in this show, by sharing these unique points of views, these truths, some of this whistleblowing that you will hear here, and the laughter and the love that we're going to impart, well, it's done so according to the laws of nature, law of one, which aims to pierce the programming that has been waged for eons on the global masses and help foster a greater world for us awakened lions and lionesses as we fight back against evil while humanity propels itself forward in the golden era that's upon us right now. That is the age of Aquarius. So first of all, thank you to all the whistleblowers, the digital warriors, the citizen soldiers, the benevolent healthcare heroes and those first responders, the military and benevolent Leos and educators, powerful parents, and the divine masculine protectors and divine feminine guardians. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your efforts to shepherd light forth in this world, awakened warriors who are fighting for the sovereignty of all souls here and now. It's not been for naught. So wherever you are watching this broadcast or hearing this podcast, I'm sending you Reiki, love, and support. So hold the line, keep it up. We're almost there. Evil is on the ropes. We're in the last round of this battle, folks, and we are crushing it. Now, as a former Canadian infantry soldier trained as a peacekeeper, who also spent some summers hopping out of helicopters, fighting wildfires in Ontario and the Yukon, I've had a continued calling to serve the greater good. It's in my blood. It's a core of my family. My younger sister in Ottawa is and has been a great service of to the world too. Ottawa, I got tripped up on that, the two, right? Good old Canadians. And here we are, going to keep this in the edit. Yeah, because this is real. And we are talking about a real-time, potent and powerful impact on society as we get rid of those corrupt individuals who are running the institutions that have been systemizing our minds. And back about patriots and my guest, Jimmy Valley. Now, if you've just tuning in for the first time, my family's lineage on my mother's and my father's side, who are each firstborn Canadians, that holds patriots who fled the Nazis in World War I and World War II. Their parents, their uncles, their aunts, their cousins, they immigrated over to North America as refugees, and many of them soldiered up, put on a uniform, and went back to fight against evil during the world wars in tanks, in bombers, as sailors, as infantrymen, as nurses and doctors, and they fought to defeat fascism once and for all. Well, unfortunately, that same fascist organization crept back into the shadows, and they've launched an outright utter attack on our world on many fronts. And so by producing the Sovereign Soul Show, it is my hope the information in our episodes, including this one we're about to dive into with Jimmy Valley, will help you achieve a higher level of sovereign freedom in your life. It's like JFK said, the service of truth is the ultimate heroism. Hence, this is how I'm acting as a soldier here today. SOULDIER, one who serves to help uplift the world's vibration so we may all live from a place of love, levity, and liberty, which is the mantra of our show. It's the ethos of our mascot, the Bling Buddha, and he fully subscribes to it. Speaking of JFK, Jimmy Valley joins us from his office at Valhill Capital in Houston, Texas, which unfortunately is where we lost that amazing president, JFK. And Jimmy has got an incredible breadth of experience. He is the founding partner and manager, as I mentioned, of Valhill Capital. He's co-founder and the chairman of Delta Wave Energy and the publisher of Astrolight Media. You can find him online, and all the links will be in the description here as well. Now, prior to founding Valhill Capital, Jimmy has enjoyed more than 2 decades as a partner in 3 global AmLaw 100 law firms. Think of it like the Fortune 50, folks, but for American law firms. And he's been advising public and private companies, master limited partnerships, investment banking firms, sovereign wealth and private equity funds in more than 100 billion US of worldwide mergers and acquisitions, M&A transactions, and security offerings, including OGE Energy Corp in its $11 billion midstream merger with Centerpoint Energy and Continental Airlines in its $8.5 billion all-stock public-to-public merger of equals with United, and so many more. The key thing that you need to understand is Jimmy is one of the leading whistleblowers in getting the information out here about multiple scandals that have been impacting the financial markets that the normal everyday person, even me, not even paying attention to, happens to be with Ethereum, Bitcoin, and XRP Ripple. So Jimmy joins us from his office right now. He's going to share more to you because, my goodness, I'm just going to sit back, take notes, learn, and have a couple of questions for us people that are like 5th graders, or at least I'm like a 5th grader. Talks to me like, Jimmy, thank you very much, my good man. Welcome aboard the show. And thank you for being such a patriot. I mean, you are a 5th generation oil man. Your family has been in Texas for, since God created sand, from the way that I look at it, right? And you guys have an amazing experience, both as an author, and I have your amazing book, in oil, and the potent power that we have of reliance on independent energy, whether you're Canadian or American, or you're in the UK, wherever. And now you went into crypto. You go like from oil and natural gas and your family's background in banking, all the way to cryptocurrency, the most new age, I would say, thing that's going on in the world. So tell us a little bit about your experience, if you don't mind, going from oil man, banking family to where you are here, and then the amazing whistleblowing that you're helping bring to the forefront of this massive corruption, it seems like, with the SEC not acting on behalf of the public's interest. Could that ever happen with the government? I'm kind of surprised. All right, off to you, good sir.
Brad, thank you so much for having me. Your introduction was amazing. I'm really honored to call you a friend, and thank you for what you're doing. You and so many other patriots out there have gone to these new media platforms. You're building, what will be in 20 years media empires, and I'm just so grateful that we have people exactly like you and other people that are doing things like you're doing. You truly are still carrying a weapon. You're truly a soldier. And it means everything. So keep going.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. And I'll send you $100 by Bitcoin. Oh, wait, maybe not after this.
Yeah, not Bitcoin for me. Yeah. And we'll talk about that. Yeah. The other thing, I don't know if you know this, but I also, my family came to the United States from Canada. James Valley was the first valley into the United States, and he came by way of Canada, and I think it was 1832.
Wow.
And it looks like, the best I've been able to track, and my grandfather and I spent some time, so this is our genealogy project is about a 4-decade project at this point in time. My grandfather got very interested in it and our roots, and he was able to kind of track us all the way back to James Valley. But he basically came in through the Great Lakes, came down the Mississippi River all the way to Louisiana, and then backtracked a little up to through the Red River to central Louisiana, where he settled at a place called Valley's Landing. So he actually landed his boat there and started his family. And his son was, I think, Edmund James Valley. So the first Valley who was born in the United States was Edmund James, and that happens to be my legal name, James Edmund Valley. I'm the first one to have the same.
That's incredible.
So anyway, a little bit of Valley history there.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. My family, the Valleys, once they got to Texas, my great grandfather, I believe it would have been, no, my great grandfather, Henry Valley, started a trucking concern called Union City Transfer right at the time that Spindletop happened in Beaumont, Texas. And he, immediately started trucking, oil field equipment, pipelines, and things of this nature. And you could kind of say our family became very entangled into the modern oil industry right at that time.
Sure, like Levi's providing jeans to the gold miners, you guys are providing all the equipment, services, and transportation for the oil companies. So
that's
wild.
And then so that's the valley side. On my mother's side, my mother's a hill. And my grandfather was a banker in Dallas, Texas. When he started his career, he was a teller right next to a gentleman named Trammell Crow. And they used to count each other's money, because they would take their drawers out and make sure that the accounts balanced and everything. And later on, when my grandfather moved to Beaumont, he actually started. He was on the original board of directors of a cafeteria concern in the South United States called Luby's Cafeterias. Wow. And he had Trammell Crow visit for a Rotary function
clue the audience, Jimmy, into who Trammell Crow is, because not many
Crow is
decade of American history. Just real quick.
He's all these gentlemen have passed long ago, but Trammell Crow was a very large real estate developer throughout the United States. He was one of the wealthiest men in the United States, but he basically started, he and my grandfather were bank tellers right next to each other. So they're at this function, and my grandfather tells the story how at the end of each night they would count each other's drawers to make sure everything was proper. And he looked over at Trammell. He said, "So what do you say, Trammell? For old time's sake, can I count your money?" Yeah. So anyway.
That's great. It's kind of like a Carnegie of the day, but not in steel, just in property development. Yeah. So pretty
that's right. Yeah.
Very well.
And cool. Trammell Crow is still a very large real estate concern. They have private equity, vehicle, verticals off of the real estate empire and everything. So if you're in Texas and you say the name Trammell Crow, people are like, "Oh, okay." Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So when I fell into the business, it was really in the 1980s, the oil and gas business went bust. We had a big boom coming out of the Arab oil embargo of the early 1970s. So kind of mid 70s into the very early 80s, it was a straight line, parabolic activity. That there was a lot of development in the United States in oil and gas, and as a consequence of that, my family did very, very well. Mm-hmm. And so when I was a little kid in the 70s, things were nice. I mean, we would have, servers and, China. And I mean, you just that's the way it was. And then I think it was in 83, my grandfather went to, so he would have been the third generation at this point in time that was working in the family business. He went to a seminar or a conference in Houston, where the chairman of Exxon was speaking, and he said, "I see no end to this great boom in sight." Mm-hmm. And so he naturally went back to Beaumont, took out more debt, started really expanding, buying more trucks and equipment and stuff to be able to really capitalize on this, what at the time they thought was going to go on forever boom. Right. And it was like no sooner was the ink dry on the loan documents that the entire oil business cratered. There was a massive bust in the mid 80s, wiped out Houston, wiped out our family business. And I was a teenager. When that happened. And so the last thing, as I was, coming into maturity, the last thing I wanted to be involved in was the oil and gas business. But things took me, as I had a little, segue in the entertainment industry. I got an associate's degree from Full Sail Center for the Recording Arts, which is now a full university. At the time, it was just starting out. I was probably the second class at Full Sail. We were in an office building in Winter Park, Florida. Yeah. Fortunately, had really talented. I wasn't that talented, but I had really talented people who were friends of mine who all went to LA and Nashville, coming out of Full Sail. So one of my buddies offered me a job at a studio. He was working in Santa Monica,
Yeah.
And I threw, what little belongings I had into my Honda Accord and
That's awesome.
put on Led Zeppelin Going to California, and off I went, I-10 West, all the way to LA, and lived there for about 3 years. And this would have been, late 80s, early 90s, which was an apocalyptic time. So, George Bush was president. The country went into a major recession. And then we had, basically social violence start to erupt, not unlike the times we're living in now. This was a precursor, I think, to the times we're living in now. But when I was there, the Rodney King riots occurred. The Northridge earthquake, which was, I think, the largest earthquake. It was an 8-point something earthquake, hit the valley. So it destroyed, the San Fernando Valley, Studio City, all those areas like that. And the other thing that happened is Malibu, massive fires went through Malibu. And then when the rain season came, since all the vegetation had been burnt up, mudslides started going down the mountains, and it was taking these multi-million-dollar mansions and just pushing them right out down the ocean. It felt apocalyptic at the time I was there. So wanted to get out of there, went to Nashville for a while. And that's when I think I ended up deciding, I should really go to college properly. So I did a semester at Belmont University in Nashville, did really well. Because after what I'd been doing in the music business, as you know very well, the entertainment industry is a tough business, and it takes a long time to pay your dues and develop the networks and all that to truly be successful in that.
And now we're seeing what's been coming out, that the reason for that has more or less been because of the satanic influences there from everybody from the C-level executive suites at the music companies to the studio companies in Hollywood, all the way down through to production executives and the talent artists. So it's probably a good thing that it didn't work out for you and I when we were both there, different time periods, to get into that and sense the evil that actually, pervasive.
Looking, hindsight is 2020, and having the knowledge that we have now about the state of affairs in Hollywood, obviously adds a new context to certain specific events that happened while I was there. This band there that was very successful called Float, and we got very close to being signed by several different record companies. And looking back on some things that were happening there, I can see they were invitations to kind of go down a path that I'd say the Lord just didn't want me going down. And so, so things worked out very well for me, even though at the time they felt very much like failures, right? So, because you weren't wise enough or sophisticated enough to have the whole context about what was happening.
And the truth is really pouring out now, Jimmy. But actually, to this point, this is a nice bridge to getting to the infiltration of in all the establishments, all the institutions of this same type of demonic presence. And I'm going to say that, you don't have to say that, of non-serving humanity, non-serving to light, non-serving to love, non-serving to faith, non-serving to righteous justice and truth, and upholding mankind's best interests, whether it is a 3-letter organization that is supposed to have your best interests in the stock market for Americans, or it's a propaganda machine, as we all know now, that is on the West Coast in LA, in Hollywood. There is this layer behind it, kind of like that wizard behind the curtains, the Wizard of Oz, that's pulling all these strings and being the puppet master. Back to Metallica, right? Puppet Masters, which is a great album. So cool. And even tuning down the frequency on the megahertz so it doesn't tap into your heart and enlighten it. It actually changes your brain chemistry through sound. Okay, so that's just a quip there. And what the hell does that have to do with cryptocurrency and corruption at the highest levels of government, Brad? Well, just saying that's just one of the other outlets on how they are attempting to keep a lid on us, attempting to control us. And remember that government is our Latin terms. The Latin terms are governus mentis. Governus means control, and mentis means mind. So that's literally mind control. And it's laughing. It's been in our face for centuries, if not eons, that term government. So Jimmy, you're at University, Nashville, and fast track us, if you don't mind, to where we are today. And the two amazing cases that you're involved in getting out there, both from ETH and Ripple.
So after you mentioned in the introduction, I spent over 2 decades practicing corporate securities law, mergers and acquisitions and securities offerings. It was in that context that I stumbled onto this digital asset movement. And initially, when I heard about it in 2017, 2018, I guess it was during the last major bull run of Bitcoin, I thought people were crazy for getting involved in that type of stuff. That's how, blind I was to what was really going on.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until, when the pandemic, hit in the spring of 2020 that I started to do some real soul searching about what was truly going on, because at that point, nothing made sense to me. About the lockdowns and the reaction from our government and governments around the world seemed so far excessive to, even if there was this virus going around that could hurt people, why would you shut down entire economies? It didn't make sense. So I started really digging in as a young lawyer doing due diligence on a company or a transaction would. And that's when I started to realize that, the puppet masters, were basically trying to shift us over into a new digital financial system and had been at work at it for quite some time. I was completely unaware of that. But once I saw it, it's like, well, the initial thought was I got to get on this wave and try to ride it, right? Try to surf this wave. It's clear now that this is where everything's going to go. And so that led me into investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and kind of those at that time were the top blue chip digital assets that you could get involved in. But when I started to work with the stuff and we started to try to use it in connection with our businesses at Valhill, it was clunky. It didn't work well. There were gas fees. You could initiate a smart contract on Ethereum and then not unwind it. There was all this weird stuff that was basically like this tech doesn't work very well. Was I guess the dominant theme for us. So we started looking at what is these are clearly the America Onlines and the Netscapes and the Napsters of like what happened when we went through the internet, internet creation and internet boom, which I had lived through that very personally with the entertainment world that I was living in, being out in California, seeing that whole thing go. So it's like which one is going to be the winner? And it was that type of due diligence process that, in seeking out which one had the most utility, which could be used to do the most stuff, which one was going to be the $6 million man of crypto, the better, faster, stronger, one. And that's how we ended up gravitating towards the XRP and investing in XRP. The more we learned about not only the asset, but the different uses that were being done with the central banking systems, with the large commercial banks globally, all of the rails that were being, connected and laid down. So there's an infrastructure, there's a layer 1 infrastructure that's been built out for well over, it's over 15 years now, right?
Could we equate that example, Jimmy, of rails to the old school Vanderbilt's laying rail track across to the nation to unite the East and the West Coast, just to give us a great analogy. So people who are new to cryptocurrency, and by the way, I want to thank you for digital assets. You're the first person I learned that from. I say cryptocurrency in the introduction so people can understand and bringing it down to digital assets that also is inclusive to NFTs. In our great inclusive days we have. So laying the infrastructure layer 1 is like the railroad track connecting different systems around the world. Is that right?
That is exactly right. Cool. So think about the, if you want to use a railroad, I think about it because I'm from the oil and gas, but I think about them as pipelines, right?
Yeah.
I think about connecting different hubs, pipelines.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things, you got to solve for. For one thing is that even though you can connect one monetary system with another monetary system with a pipeline or a rail, right? That doesn't mean that they can necessarily communicate. Okay, you have to have some type of a function that makes it where they can actually communicate, and that we call that term in the industry is make them interoperable, right?
Okay.
So the internet is interoperable. You know, there was a standards body that that set out. It's like the World Wide Web organization, and there's like 5 groups that set the standards for how the web would work and how websites would be able to interact on the web. And that's what makes it, that standardization and that interoperability of information, the way we use the internet, is what makes it possible for someone to come up with a website, put it on the web and have it work. And someone in Singapore being able to look at your website and it's going to come up and look the same and all that kind of stuff. It's a similar process for this thing we're going into with these digital assets / cryptocurrencies, which is going to be the internet of value, right? So there has to be this base layer standardization for all of these different, the users of the technology, the participants in this digital economy, to be able to communicate and transmit this value. Think about it. Chris Larson, who's the chairman of Ripple, he talks about the standardization of shipping containers, and what an explosion to global trade resulted in just coming up with these standardized boxes. You could put them on ships and transport them across the water, and you can take them right off of the crane. You can put it on a truck. You can take it right off the truck. You can put it on a railroad, on a train, right? But because they standardized the shipping container, is what allowed the commodities, and goods and commodities global economy to start to explode and expand, because everybody was using the same thing.
Great point.
It's the exact same process and digital format for the internet of value. There has to be kind of this one standard, globally agreed, so that people can interface with whatever their digital asset that they want to put into, whatever value they have, they want to put into the system, and take back whatever else they want to take. So the way people should be thinking about that type of process now is the central banks are going to move. In fact, I think it's 90% of them now are in the advanced stages of coming out with their own central bank digital currency. That's a CBDC. Okay. So
it even sounds like an STD. Hey, do you have a CBDC? Oh yeah, this is my Canadian CBDC. Lift up your skirt, watch out, and look at all the chafe rash from the control that they've enforced on you. And that's just a little Bradism for you.
No, I love it. And look, there are certain forces certainly that want to use this technology for bad things. So, for example, China's central bank is programming the CBDCs that they've launched theirs. It's been out now for 2 years. It's already in the hands of, or on the phones of hundreds of millions of people. Okay, they're way far ahead of the United States in this process, but they are actually using it. They're marrying it up with things like social credit scores and stuff like that. That they can start to decide whether you can buy hamburger. They may think that you're overweight, can't buy a hamburger, or they say, well, you're not following the right political class, so you can't have access to your money, or you can't buy a motorcycle. You and I are both motorcycle guys, right? Can you imagine if our government said we can't buy a motorcycle?
Man, if I don't have throttle therapy and you don't have it, I don't know what the heck we're gonna do. Our girls would throw us out of the house and say, see you, okay, that's it. But to that point, I just like to make a point. Just yesterday, and I'm doing one of my other shows today is about banks and tanks in China. They have lined up tanks in front of the banks for now 3 months, as of the date of the recording of the show, Jimmy, that they have deposit holders that are not able to withdraw funds. They finally got to the point of protesting and rallying to try to get into the banks. Not like if you break down a bank door, you still have to withdraw the $1, right? As if they're going to allow you to do that anyway. But just kind of that physicality is finally manifesting of that righteous anger on behalf of all of those hundreds of thousands, maybe it's millions or more now, deposit holders. They have tanks in front of the banks to stop people from getting their money. And last month, when they did this, they turned everybody's QR code for the vid. They turned it red and sent them back home because they had to follow the public health authority enforcement. And just last week, we saw a video out of Shanghai that allegedly was thousands, or at least hundreds of people in this video, handcuffed in line, armed guards standing by so that they could get their daily nose test. And just yet last night as well, folks, I'm going down this path because I'm talking about whether it depends on whether it's in the hands of good or evil, right? And that's where we are. We're not Democrat, Republican, or in Canada, the Liberal Party, social, NDP, blah, blah, blah. You are either on the side of light and love and levity, which gives you sovereign freedom, or you're on the side of dark, which is oppression, suppression, tyranny, death, and torture. Yeah. Absolutely all across the board. That's literally where we are right now as a global species. All humanity, doesn't matter by the color of your skin. You either identify as man or woman. That's truth. Okay. And it's a law of nature. So the CBDCs that Jimmy's talking about, we're already seeing it playing out in China. And they're already talking about that coming out in Canada. In fact, they started, as a Canadian, I can tell this, they started unveiling the social credit score system on social media in February during the Freedom Convoy. So this is real now today in North America. And if anybody has seen the video I posted 3 times now in the last few weeks in our interviews of the farmer in Canada who was talking about, he's watched Attorney General David Mendes in Canada, who said that I don't believe that any Canadian citizen has a right to own property, and is drafting the federal legislation to remove you from having ownership of anything, whether it is land, your children, which they did in Quebec. They pushed it through in April, that bill that now the province of Quebec can come into your home and take your children away from you. Now, if they're your property on the sovereign side, they can't. But if you're playing their game, they can, which is disgusting. So this guy says in the video that they're going to take away the property and come after me, right? And he was great, farmer. I'll send you the video later, Jimmy. The point being is that by going to this in a corrupt regime economy, now they have the ability to control whether you buy from, Jimmy already said it, you go and you can buy a hamburger. If they think you're overweight, or they just decide you can't have it, they shut you off all payment system, complete governance mentis, mind control, physical control, and the spiritual control. And the war that is being waged against humanity right now continues unless you stand up like Jimmy is, as we're about to get to some of the other things that are coming to light that he has helped bring to light. And I also just want to say this, because I forgot to mention this in the introduction, Jimmy, with you, is that Jimmy's also, and I appreciate you saying a warrior, Jimmy's a full-on warrior as well. He's literally sending this information for months directly to the heads of the SEC, to the Department of Justice, to the heads of the news networks, whether it's Fox and MSNBC. And then up until last week, I hadn't asked you before we got on the show today, Jimmy, mute, not a single response back. Here's all of the corrupt data proving out, as an attorney himself, this is one of his specialties in law. And they're just nothing. So continue. I jumped in. I thought I was going to go in for about 10 seconds there to just reaffirm. And then I just kind of went off on that side to bring it to the people who are hearing for the first time this information, Jimmy, or those who are just awakening and going, I sense something wrong here. Something's intuitively off. Mm-hmm. Well, this is happening, right? You have a communist country in Canada. Canada is a full-on communist country right now. So the folks that are in America listening to this, that country to your north is full-on communist. 100% absolutely. This is what they're doing to the citizens now. This is what they've been doing to us for the last 8 months, heavily. Censorship. Texts, I can tell you, that can go to friends of mine around Canada. They're not receiving those texts. So there's full-on infiltration. Thank you, sir. I'll give it back to you here. Because it's
you're right to voice exactly what you've just voiced, because that is the context that all of this new digital asset world is rising within. Okay. And I think that's what, as we get into talking about things like ETH and JP Morgan's involvement, the legacy banking systems, tentacles being, all in it is the war. It's just between good and evil, doing right things, benefiting humanity or being destructive of humanity. Right. It's really that simple.
Yep.
And, humanity thrives in a context of freedom and being able to go out and live your life as a sovereign being. Mm-hmm. And if the bad side were to win this contest for the evolution of the financial system, the things that you're pointing out would be exactly the way that they would be used. How do we know? Because that's exactly what they're already trying to do with the legacy financial system. So it's important that we fight this fight. We're all fighting the same war. And it's an amazing time because we're all starting to align, even though people come at this. I think about us all being on the front line of a ring, that kind of goes around. Nice. And everybody's kind of got their viewpoint into how this affects them based on their background, their experiences, the things they're interested in, right? And that's no different for us kind of through this systemic financial side. But really, when you just distill it down to what it's all about, it's a battle royale for all the marbles, right? Whether we get to continue as a species, or whether we continue as slaves until we are destroyed as a species. That it's for all the marbles, and that's why it's so important. So actually, what you were saying provided excellent context for how all this financial stuff, which is really in the weeds, and it's boring to most people. Most people don't care to think about this.
Right, because it hasn't affected them
yet. Right.
Hey everybody, it's Brad here. Our show will continue in a moment real quick. If it resonates with you, drop a like, follow us, and subscribe to the show. Hear from cutting edge guests who are experts in their field, have a lot of laughs, and discover some powerful tips on how you can thrive through 2025 in this amazing golden era of humanity. So give us a like, drop a comment, follow us right now as we fight back on the war being waged on humanity right now. And by the way, if you feel so inclined, please do share this with 9 friends, family, and colleagues as well. I'm deeply honored you're listening to this. Thank you for doing so right now, for those many of you who have taken that step. And here we go, back to our show.
But look, the other piece of this is that this new financial system is also, it's an amazing technology that could massively benefit humanity.
Right.
And actually promote freedom and values and families and all that stuff. There's billions of people that live in this world that are outside of the current banking system, and the banking system has been weaponized against those people to basically keep them out, right? Yep. There's a reason African nations are poor, yet they're extremely resource wealthy, right? So our work, at the firm, my personal calling and mission is to, use my skills and use my knowledge of their game to basically take the fight directly to them, and we will win. I mean, we will absolutely win because humanity is waking up. Even though it's horrible to see, our brothers and sisters in humanity in China being put in those situations where their own funds are being, nationalized from them, and the governments are using, powers of the military infrastructure to keep them from their own assets, is horrible to watch. It can't last though, because that's just ultimately the corruption and all of the demonic presence, to use kind of your terminology, will be the exact thing that destroys those systems from within. We're basically watching that happen now. That's the destruction of these legacy systems is exactly what's going on. And that's why there's so much chaos, in the world, in the different feeds that are coming to us, and we're seeing it. The world is on fire. Humanity wants a better way. The technology is there to provide the better way, and we cannot lay down our weapons until we have absolutely eradicated the bad guys.
Yep. And the first weapon is your heart, and the second weapon is the mind, and everything else flows after that. And from leveraging your skill set with your faith-based upbringing and continue moving forward in faith and love and light, you and your family, Jimmy, and with your mind, leveraging the skills that you mentioned. Tell us about right now Ripple and this article that just came out. If you'd like, I can pull it up on Forbes just yesterday about the slapdown of the SEC and the mass corruption. It seems to continue to happen. I'm going to say it's corruption because of the details that are lined up as a result of the case that came out, and the federally appointed judge in the Supreme Court has been hearing these hearings. There's $100 million in legal fees that Ripple, XRP has been charged. The Ripple founders have had to, and all the investors, there's I saw on your email, there's about $8.1 trillion minimum in damages. And that was a month ago, based on a per daily basis rate of return that's owed on this case alone, that was launched by, it seems like, the head of the SEC, who had interest in another cryptocurrency, digital asset. And in order to inflate that, this is what I see, my perspective, he turned around and launched a lawsuit and sicked all the SEC legal dogs on those folks at XRP and Ripple. And as a result of that, plummeted the value and drove up his shares. Boy, it sounds familiar. Something happening on the West Coast, like Nancy Pelosi and her husband just making 3 times her salary in a month by investing in a company she's about to approve legislation on this week. Wow. Interesting. Okay, so that's a summation. Please do a deep dive, and if you like, I can bring up that article as we.
The article that you're referencing was written by Dr. Rosalind Layton, who is really been the one journalist who's kind of been basically just reporting exactly what's happening. But essentially, what I'll try to encapsulate this story. There were. If you go back to 2017, there were kind of the big 3 market cap cryptocurrencies. There was Bitcoin, which everybody knows. There was Ethereum, and there was XRP. Those are considered to be kind of your blue chip cryptocurrencies, right? The thing is that Bitcoin and Ethereum are both driven on a protocol that's called proof of work, which requires this mining process, this consumption of energy to drive the miners, because they're proposing solutions to problems in order to solve those problems and create the next block. That's what the proof of work protocol does. XRP is on a different protocol called consensus, which requires of all of its validator nodes to come to a greater than, I think it's 80% consensus on a certain thing. And all the tokens were pre-mined and basically populated to the ledger. So it's just the transactions that are coming to agreement by a consensus. These are some genius mathematician, software engineers who have come up with this stuff. And they had the benefit of, having Bitcoin. They wanted to make a better Bitcoin. They knew Bitcoin would ultimately not be scalable because the proof of work would consume so much energy. So we had a carbon issue with it.
And they were right about that, by the way, because just last week in Texas, they shut down the largest Bitcoin mining facility because of power outages.
Yeah.
So they saw the writing on the wall. So please continue. Yeah.
And Texas actually has, right in that area, the one that the media focused on was Riot Blockchain's Windstone facility, I think. But right in that area is also Bitdeer's facility, which is the largest. It is actually the largest. And wow. I mean, when I say right down the road, they're within 1.5 miles of each other, these 2 facilities. Oh. And anyway.
They're not going up in flames like food processing plants, though.
Shocking, they're not.
Anyway, back to it.
Yeah. We could do a whole nother show on Bitcoin mining and who controls it and all that kind of stuff. And it would be absolutely horrifying to your audience to learn what's really going on there. But back to the case. So as we went into the bull run of late 2017, early 2018, XRP outperformed both Bitcoin and Ethereum just massively.
Right.
And I think it became very obvious to anybody who was paying attention. I was not one of those people at that time. I would come along later. But for the people who were paying attention, it was obvious that XRP was a better asset, right? For the purpose of, exchanging value, making payments, and certainly cross-border payments. Those other two projects just would not be scalable because of the proof of work limitations, whereas the consensus limitation the consensus protocol was just better. So at that point in time is when the shenanigans start to happen.
Right.
In January of 2018, both XRP and Ethereum hit what at that time was their all-time high. XRP has never returned to its all-time high since once the weapons came out. Ethereum and Bitcoin have both passed what the all-time high was back in 2018. They passed it in this last bull run that we were going through, 2020, 2021. So the first thing that happened is that CoinMarketCap, which was kind of one of the mainstream exchange media platforms, basically started not reporting the Korean trades of XRP, which, the Asian markets are far and away ahead of us on adoption of these digital assets. So in Japan, in Korea, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and in China, they have fully adopted this technology. They're using it. They're driving more value into it all the time. They're doing massive banking level deals and stuff like that. It's the type of stuff that most people in the West are completely oblivious that this is even going on because it's not being reported in mainstream.
It's not on the news, right? Yeah, not on a squawk box.
And most people, either get their news from Twitter and from tweets or mainstream. And if it's not a headline, or Apple News, if it's not a headline, it can't be distilled into this like 5-second thing, then they're just not looking at it. So
my Bradism is if it's not a headline, it ain't happening, right? Because it's just they don't know. You don't know what you don't know until it comes down to people like us, where we are the news now.
Exactly. So so that's the first thing that happens. They basically manipulated the market price of XRP by cutting out the most dominant trade of it in Korea. That immediately started to make the price look like it was going down, and it did force it down. The other projects were falling off as well during this time. So we're in the spring of 2018, and Ethereum ended up losing 60% of its market top.
Yeah.
So all around this time, the sponsors behind Ethereum are behind the scenes, and they're having meetings with the Securities and Exchange Commission. They're having meetings with other regulators. Mm-hmm. They're striking deals. We didn't know at the time, but they're striking deals with JP Morgan, other members of the legacy banking system. Okay. And in the, I think it was late 2017, mid 2017, you have a couple of attorneys come in who are very elite, high level, big law attorneys like myself. One became the chairman of the SEC, is a gentleman named Jay Clayton, and he had worked for a white shoe, old Wall Street law firm, very powerful law firm called Sullivan and Cromwell.
They used to sell them, yeah.
And the other gentleman who came in a month after Chairman Clayton was a gentleman named Bill Hinman, and he came from a firm, another white shoe Wall Street law firm called Simpson Thacher, who notably their number one client around that time for decades had been JP Morgan. But anyway, he was a Silicon Valley corporate partner at Simpson Thacher. He becomes the director of corporation finance, which is kind of the main policy division of the Securities Exchange Commission. They kind of end up setting all the policy, deciding how the audits are going to work, what type of things should be disclosed, all this type of stuff, right?
May I just ask a question as a Canadian?
Yeah.
About this. So would it not be a conflict of interest if you have public officials put into a a position of power at a federal agency who had direct relationship for decades in their private business practice.
Yeah.
Is that not a conflict of interest?
Well, it is. And,
Okay.
Even if you go and look back at the video of the Senate hearings of Chairman Clayton in particular, Senator Warren questioned him at length about the fact he was from Sullivan Cromwell and all the conflicts he would have. And he basically, he was required to recuse himself from kind of voting or stating an opinion on any matter involving one of his former clients or a client of the law firm and all this stuff. There are very severe ethical conflicts of interest, ethical rules that have all been just blown into smithereens by these guys and what they did during their time there.
And launched a legal assault on.
Before we even get to that, let me tell you about Mr. Hinman.
Hey everybody, it's Brad here. Our show will continue in a moment real quick. If it resonates with you, drop a like, follow us, and subscribe to the show. Hear from cutting edge guests who are experts in their field, have a lot of laughs, and discover some powerful tips on how you can thrive through 2025 in this amazing golden era of humanity. So give us a like, drop a comment, follow us right now as we fight back on the war being waged on humanity right now. And by the way, if you feel so inclined, please do share this with 9 friends, family, and colleagues as well. I'm deeply honored you're listening to this. Thank you for doing so right now. For those many of you who have taken that step. And here we go, back to our show.
So Mr. Hinman comes on, and the first thing he does,
and Hinman again is the commissioner.
He's the director. He came into the SEC as the director of corporation finance, kind of your lead policy guy at the SEC.
Gotcha. Thank you.
The first thing he does, we didn't know it then, but we know it now because there was a FOIA request by a group called Empower Oversight, and we've gotten a lot of documents and emails around Mr. Hinman and communications with the ethics group and all that stuff. So he basically goes into a negotiation, a trilateral negotiation between the ethics department of the SEC, his former law firm, and himself to basically have what he called retirement benefits paid to him during the whole time he's at the SEC from Simpson Thacher. It was $15 million while he was the director of corporation finance that he got. He was only there 3 years. So roughly $5 million a year that he was paid. And when he's having these communications, the ethics department basically tells him flat out, you have an ongoing financial interest in your law firm.
Right.
His
that represents that client. Yeah.
Right. His payments were directly, they were derived from the profits of the law firm. Okay. So he was effectively still a partner at the law firm. Okay. And they say to him, that means you have a criminal, they're basically a criminal level financial conflict with Simpson Thacher.
Right.
So what does that mean? That means they told him you cannot meet with them. You cannot talk on the phone with them. You cannot do anything that would be remotely perceived. They're telling him this in writing. It's all in writing. That could be remotely perceived as being beneficial to Simpson Thacher or their clients. Okay. At this time, Simpson Thacher was one of the kind of founding members on the legal side, certainly, of the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, which is the primary driver. It's a nonprofit that's the primary driver of Ethereum. Okay, that was just a fact at this time.
Okay, so I just would like to put this part on pause to do a recap because things are moving at such a fast pace now. While Jimmy speaks slowly and concisely, as he has been so well versed to do so in all of his amazing experience as a lawyer at the highest levels, the information that he's imparting is Mach 5. So what you've got here is you've got mass corruption. We just talked about that. And then he just mentioned Ethereum. So we've just went from XRP Ripple to Ethereum. Ethereum's the number 2 cryptocurrency and has been for a long time, right under Bitcoin, and just mentioned that Ethereum has parties that are privy to its founding by Sullivan Cromwell and
Simpson Thatcher.
Simpson Thatcher.
Sullivan's involved as well.
Oh my gosh.
Actually represent consensus.
So where we came in at digital assets, cryptocurrency, it's like a for the people, by the people type of thing. Turns out it's quietly been set up in the background and infiltrated by the banksters that many people will relate them to as a term, or the banks. And rather than it being we're breaking away from the banks, we're going to do this trade all on our own, it was actually, sounds like it was set up in the background as just a sneak attack on everybody. And then we saw in the Canadian Freedom Convoy that the Canadian regime that's running it right now, which is it is a regime because it's a coalition government, which is treasonous under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So I can call it a regime because that's exactly what's classified in a legal setting. That regime went in and it blocked and took cryptocurrencies from the donors, as well as locking down our bank accounts for anybody who donated to the Freedom Convoy. So very interesting here. All right, continue, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, so the web is so expansive, Brad, and I'm going to try to keep us on this very,
yeah, we're an hour in, and it's just like really like the fireworks are going off in people's minds. I think
when you
now
start to talk about these issues that are going on in Canada, you don't want me to tell you how Mr. Hinman and Mr. Clayton first got to know each other so well. They took Alibaba public in their IPO in 2014. They were the lead partners on that deal. So it starts to expand in that direction as well. But let's try to stay on track, or we'll have 5 hours here. Nobody's going to sit for 5 hours. We'll have to do it again. So 2017, he negotiates his retirement deal with SEC Ethics. He's getting paid the $15 million. And his law firm is a founding member of the Ethereum Alliance Association. Okay. Wow. As we get to the latter part of 2017, Mr. Hinman starts having meetings with the Ethereum. The real owner of Ethereum is a company called Consensus. It's driven by a guy named Joe Lubin, and now it's owned 40% by JP Morgan. That would all kind of play out later. But at the time, he starts having meetings. All this is publicly available. He starts having meetings with Consensus about Ethereum, effectively, in kind of the end of 2017, early 2018. Wow. Where at some point it occurs to him, out of the blue by himself, well, this is actually what, so Jay Clayton in early 2018 goes to a conference at Stanford Law School to talk about, the securities world and, all this stuff, and tell the good kids of, Stanford Law, how important the securities laws are and complicated and all this stuff. And while he's there in Palo Alto in Stanford, he ducks out at some point. He has a meeting with Andreessen Horowitz. Okay. And they come up with this idea that Andreessen Horowitz should basically pull together some law firms that they work with in what would become known as the Venture Capital Working Group. Yeah. And that Venture Capital Working Group should provide a memo to the SEC about how they should think about regulating digital assets. Okay. So they do that. And you're going to start to recognize some of these names. The firm that Chris Dixon, who was a managing principal at Andreessen Horowitz, a major venture capital fund that has been all over Web3 and the development of the cryptocurrency industry. They have massive investments, billions and billions of dollars in investments. A guy named Chris Dixon basically reaches out to a law firm called Perkins Coie. And some people, that name may resonate with them because, of course, Perkins Coie was Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Convention's law firm, and is the ones who basically are embroiled into. That's who Durham just went after the partner for lying to the FBI. He was a Perkins Coie partner. All right, so you see, it's all kind of connected. So Perkins Coie ends up kind of being the primary author of this memo that goes to the SEC, which effectively comes up with this new concept under the primary test for what is a security or not. It's called the Howey test. It was a decision that the Supreme Court of the United States issued in 1946, okay? And it's got 4 prongs to it, but they basically invented another prong, or they undermined one of the prongs. One of the key prongs of the Howey test is that it has to be kind of being driven by another party, okay? So the investor is relying on somebody else to go drive value into the thing, the company or the asset or whatever it is, all right? Mm-hmm. They came up with this concept of decentralization. I mean, you're probably hearing that all the time now in, you know, the crypto world. It's like, oh, it's our project's decentralized, right? It's this concept, and
a BlockFi here and a DeFi here a BlockFi there.
DeFi, there it is. So they were chipping away at the prong of relying on somebody else. That there wasn't a, to use Mr. Hinman's terminology as he went on the marketing tour after, you know, what I'm about to tell you about. He said there was no, they couldn't identify a third party promoter because it was so sufficiently decentralized. They basically made it up, right? So they give this memo to Hinman, and Hinman decides what they're going to do with the full blessing of Chairman Clayton and other people. There were certain people who were involved at the SEC, and there were others who were excluded, and they didn't even know about this stuff, right? The ethics group, the ethics department was one such group that was not provided with the information before this, what ends up happening. So this is the spring rolling into the early summer of 2018, okay? And he decides he's going to give a speech. He decides he's going to go on, at the time, Yahoo had this massive, they called it the Crypto Summit, okay? There was this massive industry conference with all the luminaries of the crypto space were going to be coming together, and the SEC was going to be there. The SEC was going to basically talk about how they're thinking about, you know, the regulation, how the securities laws apply to digital assets, right? So they draft up this speech, and Hinman goes out, and another important fact is that when Ethereum was launched, they actually had the first initial coin offering. It was an IPO in digital asset world, right? It was an unregistered securities offering. And they went through all kinds of shenanigans. They located their business in Switzerland and all this stuff to try to basically run around and get out of the securities laws, right? But they had the very first initial coin offering, basically a securities offering. And they raised money to basically build out the project. That's exactly how Ethereum started in 2014, okay? And so Hinman goes up on stage during this conference. At the time, when he walks on stage, Ethereum is down 60% from its all-time high in January. Ripple's down, XRP is down as well. And he walks up and he effectively says, based on all of our analysis and all of this, you know, heavy thinking and deliberation, all this stuff we've been doing, we think that Bitcoin is sufficiently decentralized to not be a security. So there's really no reason to apply the disclosure regimes and the requirements of the securities laws to Bitcoin. And it probably would have been fine if he'd have just stopped there. But then he says, and also for basically the same reasons, putting aside the fact that they had an ICO putting aside the fundraising they did in connection with the creation of the project. So ignore the fact that they had an unregistered securities offering. We think now Ethereum is sufficiently decentralized, and therefore there's really no benefit to apply the securities laws to Ethereum.
And the money
drops the mic, he walks off the stage, and the price rockets within the minutes after he says this, makes this pronouncement. It rockets up 11%. It was so shocking. It was so parabolic of a move. Okay. Remember, it's been going down, 60%. 60%. And then it just rockets right off as he walks off the stage. It was so shocking that the moderator of the conference basically in an excited utterance, which is admissible in the court of law, by the way. It's an exception to the hearsay rule. In an excited utterance, as he's talking to one of the founders of Grayscale, I think, who's like one of the largest, crypto investment funds that there are. He's basically got the chart behind him, and it's this massive, video wall, and it's going parabolic, and they're like, look at that. He said moments after, Director Hinman's speech, it went to the moon, and he basically says, you see why insider trading is illegal, right? He just kind of just says that like off the cuff because it was so shocking, right? Okay, then Director Hinman walks down the street and goes on to CNBC, and they're like, so you've basically the SEC has effectively just ruled, they've made a rule that Ethereum is not a security. And can you explain, they're really like, can you explain the whole, how did you get there? How did you come up with this? All this is on video, right? And he says, well, we've just looked at it and we think that it's sufficiently decentralized such that there isn't an identifiable third-party promoter. So we don't think that there's a benefit for the securities laws being applied. So what happens in the market, every major law firm, Latham Watkins, Cravath, Jones Day, Skadden Arps, go on and on and on down the most major law firms in the world start writing client alerts with this whole new sufficiently decentralized prompt, right? The Director Hinman just gave a speech. The American Bar Association ends up doing 2 reports referring to this speech. Chairman Clayton goes out and he's on his law school and market conference tour, and he talks about this speech and how that's basically the way the SEC, that's the way we think about it at the SEC. If you were to come to us, this is the way we think about it. It refers everybody to the speech that he gave. Okay.
And to clarify, point of clarification. There you go. Look at that. Hey, I've been watching LA Law. Remember that? Great show. Point of clarification is the reports. Yeah, exactly. Right. Apparently they were trying to get that back. The reports that they're writing, Skadden Arps, Jones Day, you name it. What was that saying? Was it saying that, well, Bitcoin and Ethereum, 2 different cryptocurrencies in this new digital asset world, aren't subject to regulation by the SEC, then anything that is similar as a cryptocurrency will not be? Is that the reports they were writing?
That was kind of that was inferred from what they were saying, because I think that is the way the attorney class was looking at it.
Here's the litmus test. Here's the case law that's being built on it now. Here's the director at the SEC.
Right. There was just this speech
being built. Okay.
They were trying to extrapolate what Director Hinman had said from the speech.
Right.
And basically a lot of them were saying, people would go on stage and say, well, I guess if you can prove up objectively that you're as decentralized as Ethereum, you should be good. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody who had invested in XRP thought, well, that certainly applies to XRP, right? They're arguably more decentralized than Ethereum is.
And end to end, it's the same. And I would just like to bring some context into here for the viewers and the listeners, Jimmy, that we're talking about a third party. Think about the banking, the SWIFT system, right? So if I'm going to send money from Canada to the US or convert US to Canada, but go, from my personal bank account to Jimmy's bank account and say, hey, Jimmy, here's a donation. If I send it at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, he's not going to get it until maybe 4 p.m. on a Wednesday, because then it's got to go through the regulatory process in the clearinghouse in New York and through one of the major banks, the clearinghouse, which authorizes the transaction and said, Brad's sending Jimmy $100 because you give him a nice pat on the back on his intro. And then all of a sudden that $100 Canadian that he sent to Jimmy gets $28 US because that's the, and he's like, thanks, Brad. I can go buy, a couple of Coors Light with that.
I get a
anyway. Yeah, so that's what we're talking about as that third party interaction, right? And verification process. So that's the context that we're speaking about here in the digital asset space, and where they're saying, hey, it doesn't apply to Bitcoin. They're decentralized enough. Ethereum, okay. And now Ripple, XRP, which is just the company is XRP and the crypto is Ripple. Is that right? Other way around, excuse me. Company is Ripple And yeah, that's right, because the XRP is the ticker. My apologies. So yeah, sure, they're third in the world. They were about to go up to number 2, and all of a sudden, let me just draw again the triangle here. You have one of the top 3 banks in the US, and you have 2 of the people at in the head positions of the SEC, whose client is one of the top 3 banks in the US for decades that they've worked with. And now you have the law firm that represented one of the 2 major parties in the United States, who was about to get in on the 2020 election and come into office. We're not going to go down that road and what that is or not, but you have the most powerful law firm representing for a party, for the other political party. And look at this amazing connection. And somebody goes out on a stage from over here and says, doesn't apply to Bitcoin, doesn't apply to Ethereum. Ethereum all of a sudden just 11% in minutes. It's almost like somebody was waiting to press a button once that speech happened, right?
Yeah.
A few buttons, like, oh, as soon as that happens, off we go. And then everybody, it's Brad here. Our show will continue in a moment, real quick. If it resonates with you, drop a like, follow us, and subscribe to the show. Hear from cutting edge guests who are experts in their field, have a lot of laughs, and discover some powerful tips on how you can thrive through 2025 in this amazing golden era of humanity. So give us a like, drop a comment, follow us right now as we fight back on the war being waged on humanity right now. And by the way, if you feel so inclined, please do share this with 9 friends, family, and colleagues as well. I'm deeply honored you're listening to this. Thank you for doing so right now, for those many of you who have taken that step. And here we go, back to our show. And then everybody starts coming on. And now we're at Ripple here. What's going on?
The other thing I think that's important for the audience to understand is that in 2015, the Department of Justice, in connection with FinCEN, which is kind of the U.S. Treasury's financial crime kind of group, they regulate the banking industry effectively. They sued Ripple and sued Ripple because they said that they were engaged in transactions in virtual currencies, and that should be subject to banking regulations. And so they had a settlement in 2015 where they had statements. They had a statement of fact that was signed off by the attorneys of the Department of Justice and everybody at FinCEN. And it says for a fact that XRP is a virtual currency and that it would have to basically start complying with, they had to pay a fine, and they'd have to start complying with basically banking regulations because the XRPL and Ripple was engaged in effectively a money transfer process, money communication transfer process. So that had happened back in 2015 and was existing precedent. You had already had other
PayPal. Like PayPal was around 2000, tech boom. Like we're talking about.
There you go.
Like
this is
people.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So then what happens is there are some other events that take place after the speech leading into 2020. In 2020 is kind of when we get turned on to the whole digital asset thing and start investing in Bitcoin initially and Ethereum and ultimately XRP as well. I participated in the first ever crypto town hall meeting with Tom Emmer, who's a representative out of Minnesota, and actually gave him during that meeting a donation in XRP. And Brad Garlinghouse, who's the CEO of Ripple, was part of that crypto town hall as well. So this was in the summer of 2020. It was an amazing thing. I think there were only like 45 people on the call.
Wow.
This is during the lockdowns, right?
Yeah.
So we were doing it just like this.
Yeah.
And on that, Tom Emmer said XRP is not a security. Around that same time, Chris Giancarlo, who's the former chairman of the CFTC, and at this point in time in 2020, he's a senior law partner at, or senior counsel, I believe is his title, at Wilkie Farr, which is another one of these on par New York white shoe law firms in the securities M&A world, just like a Simpson Thacher or Sullivan. But he and one of his colleagues at Wilkie Farr did a full analysis of XRP under the Howey test and came to the conclusion that XRP was not a security. So there's all this precedent that exists, right? That XRP is not a security.
Yeah.
I didn't even, by the time we're in the late summer, early fall of 2020, the concept of XRP being a security was like not even something I thought somebody could say with a straight face. It was like,
Right.
I thought it was like no risk.
Right.
Because there was so much out there. And you had the Hinman speech, which if you applied this whole decentralization concept to the nodes of XRP, and Ripple only controls like 6% of the nodes or something like that. It's like,
wow.
It's all the nodes are spread out all over the world. The SEC
no monopoly.
Has a node, has a XRP node.
Yeah.
The SEC has one.
The SEC has an XRP node.
Correct.
And XRP is with only 6%. You can't even define that as monopoly.
Correct.
In the stock market, you couldn't even define that as a hostile takeover bid.
Correct. That's right.
So yeah, okay.
So we go along, and in November we actually
describe go long, because now we're getting a little bit
I'm
more
saying time is
trading
passing.
terminology.
Time is passing.
Yep.
So we're in kind of the early fall, going into really the late fall, Thanksgiving kind of time, where it's like before, I want to say it was in the middle of November, and all of a sudden XRP starts rocketing. And I mean rocketing. It was, going parabolic type of thing.
Ripple's making waves.
Ripple's making waves. It's clear that it's going to end up kind of becoming the lead digital asset if it continues on that trajectory.
Yeah.
And then on December 21st, 2020, Brad Garlinghouse, who's the CEO of Ripple, comes out on the market and says that tomorrow the SEC is going to sue Ripple, and Chris Larson, who's the chairman of Ripple, and Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO, for selling unregistered securities since 2013. That they should have known this whole time that XRP was a security. And so then the next day, December 22nd, the SEC files a lawsuit. There's no allegations of fraud, which is kind of curious, because in most of these,
they'd have to prove that in the filing, right?
They'd have to prove it in court.
In court, but they have enough. Okay, gotcha.
They didn't. They just alleged a strict violation of Section 5 of the Securities Act, which is the section of the Securities Act that requires any offer or sale of securities to be registered with the SEC. Which, since nobody thought XRP was a security, they of course had not done. So,
great, Jimmy. So what was the market cap on 12/21/2020? These guys numbers, right? What was the market cap?
I don't remember exactly what the market cap was, but $15 billion was lost that day from the market cap.
Okay.
Or just from that's how much value went out of XRP.
Right.
So I think it was trading, I don't know, 70 cents, 80 cents, something like that, a token, and it went down to like 17 cents, 15, something like that.
Wow. So let me just share for the Americans that are tuning in here. When this case gets proved, because I feel that the case is going to get proved and it's going to go back on the SEC, guess who's going to have to pay the fines? The American taxpayer, those who are still caught up in the the income you make, not the compensation, and then go and register that. And then, that three-letter agency that begins with internal as the name. And because I've already had a strike on the channel, Jimmy, every time I come in, I've got to speak in code sometimes. Guess what? If it was 8.1 trillion of per day value, that is the rate of return that's owed back to that point in time initially, and that was 8.1 trillion 30 days ago. It's gone up from that. If the ruling comes out in favor of Ripple, that value needs to be brought back to XRP, and because the SEC is an American federal agency, that's going to be put back on you guys, potentially, as well as obviously those directors personally. But if he's only making 15 million, that's, not even a drop in an ocean of what's owed. So this is why Americans need to be fucking pissed off that this corruption continues. Because like we said toward the earlier part of this, that, hey, people don't know, it doesn't affect them yet. This is just another one of the things that could massively affect you, because just a few people in collusion that are doing things that are harmful in an extreme financial sense, which also harm people from a psychological and emotional state as well, and on their sovereignty and on their ability to provide for families. And what you've got is innovation. You've got these amazing minds at Ripple that come up with this. We're going to make this better. Bitcoin was built as a dark web currency. What happens on the dark web? Assassination contracts, blackmail, trafficking. You just go to Tim Ballard at Operation Underground Railroad, and I mean, he's got multiple interviews on that the majority of these payments were done on the dark web. And back when Bitcoin was established, over 15 roughly years ago now, I might be off on the exact year, that's primarily what it was for. And other types of trafficking, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, and whatnot. So these innovators come in and say, we're going to make this better. And now these administrators come in to crush innovation. So innovation is crushed by administration. And then on top of that, we've got this. So I just want to point this out as why basically anybody should be have righteous anger again right now, because this is another direct frontal attack on your sovereignty and your capability to move forward and prosper, and why this is other information that needs to be shared worldwide. Jimmy, continue if you don't mind. Really need to drive that point home.
No, it's an excellent point, Brad. Thank you for doing that. So that's December 22nd. The next day, and I want to point out that so to bring the lawsuit, the 5 commissioners, the SEC has 5 commissioners, they had to have a vote, and it was not unanimous. It was 3-2. Okay.
So they had quorum.
There were 2. They had everybody voted, but there was 2 commissioners that didn't think that was the right thing to do. Right.
Interesting. In
addition to that, 5 days before the lawsuit, there was a former SEC commissioner, a guy named Joseph Grunfest, who is a major corporate securities lawyer himself and a professor at Stanford Law School. He wrote all 5 commissioners because he had gotten wind that they were planning to bring this enforcement action against Ripple, and basically pointed out to them, there is no factual distinction between what XRP has done and what Ethereum did that you gave a free pass to in Bitcoin. And B, it was known at that time that basically the top executive level management of the SEC was all going to be departing in the days around when they were going to be filing this lawsuit. And if they did that, it would basically, he said, you could destroy the entire legacy of the Security and Exchange Commission. It's going to be viewed so poorly that the people who bring this case then turn around and walk right out the door. So 5 days before that vote and that they commenced the action on the December 22nd, they had full knowledge from a very well-respected person, one of their peers, about what could be the fallout. He also mentioned that there would be billions of dollars in damages immediately in the market, and that you would hurt ordinary, investors. Kind of your ordinary rank and file retail investors were going to be substantially harmed. So December 22nd, they filed the suit. December 23rd, Jay Clayton, who's the chairman of the SEC, leaves the SEC. So they filed a lawsuit. He walks out the door,
goes back
to his law firm, Sullivan and Cromwell, which is Consensus's law firm. Okay, they represent the third-party promoter of Ethereum, and within 2 months, he joins a hedge fund called One River. One River, we would come to find out, had just made a $1 billion bet in October of 2020, basically a month and a half before the lawsuit was filed, on Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Wow. I mean,
it's a classic definition of regulatory capture, where the legacy banking system, together with these kind of venture capitalists and hedge funds, conspired together to go after the number one competitor of their project and actually have regulatory action taken to basically crush the competitor and let the others go. So Bitcoin and Ethereum went on to far exceed their all-time highs in the year that followed. XRP has, it got up to around, I think it got up to $1.96 or something in April of 2021.
Yeah.
But then it's gone back down. It trades around 30 something cents now. And all of this corruption just continues to kind of come out. So the article that you referenced, the SEC has basically been trying every litigation tactic possible to keep the information around the decision making and the comments to the speech that Hinman made back in 2018. They do not want those emails and documents and memos to come out. Because probably they say that either XRP is not a security or that there's no difference between Ethereum and XRP type of thing. The case would be over, right? So they were initially ordered to produce this information in the litigation in April of 2021. It is now July, it's late July,
right,
2022, and they still have not produced the information. They've been ordered 5 times to produce these Hinman, what's called the Hinman emails now. And they have tried initially to throw a deliberative process privilege at the at the judge,
right,
and ripple in the case. That took months and months to play out. They've more recently tried to say that all these documents and emails are protected by attorney-client privilege. And now, and that took, 4 months to work through the whole system. And the order that the judge just rendered, I think it was last week sometime, basically says that the SEC is basically, it says the hypocrisy of the SEC. These are
that's
words
what she wrote. That's what the judge wrote. Her words, yeah, the hypocrisy.
To say that, it wasn't guidance to his speech wasn't guidance to the market, because it was just his personal opinion, right? Yet he should be protected. These documents should be protected by attorney-client privilege, because all these attorneys at the SEC were providing him guidance, to go out to the market. Is like it appears to her that they are just using tactics to achieve a desired objective, a goal with the lawsuit, and not in, these are exact quote, a faithful allegiance to the law.
Right.
So very damning. And that's what Dr. Layton wrote that Forbes article about, was basically that court order. So that's where we are today. The corruption continues. There was just an oversight hearing, a House oversight hearing of the SEC enforcement, where we had the director of enforcement, who's the former New Jersey Attorney General. His name's Gov't, I think. He was before the House Oversight Committee on Banking and stuff, and you had Brad Sherman chaired the meeting for Maxine Waters. It's Maxine Waters' committee, but she wasn't sitting in the chair. Brad Sherman opened up the meeting, which is it was just supposed to be a oversight of SEC enforcement type thing. He basically comes out saying XRP is a security, like starts the hearing like it hadn't even been determined. So he has actually
misled.
So he's had market impact by coming out and saying that, and even finished the meeting saying the same thing, and that the SEC should go after all of the exchanges that traded in XRP, because they should have known it was a security too. So he basically, he wants to just wipe out all of crypto. Warren Davidson, who's a representative from Ohio, put forth a fact pattern to the director of enforcement, and he said, if you have a director, it's just a hypothetical. So if you have a director that goes out and gives a speech in the market, and he prefaces the whole thing with, this is just his personal opinion. It's not the position of the agency.
Right.
But it turns out that basically all of the leadership of the agency and the attorneys from the agency and the ethics department of the agency basically reviewed the remarks and said they were okay. You know, if that has a market effect, I mean, should people basically be able to rely on that as the agency's guidance? And the director said, he said, well, I can't speak to that because that exact fact pattern is playing out in a current litigation. And Representative David said, so well, what litigation is that? And the guy just goes, well, the Ripple lawsuit, of course. And it's just like, are you clowns serious? I mean, the damages now are in the multiple trillions of dollars.
Right.
The American innovation has been kneecapped.
Yep.
The bodies are laying everywhere, while, you know, in every other country in the world, XRP has been deemed a non-security. Yep. We are the only country that is sitting here being held back by these federal agencies that are just, they haven't even put on any evidence in the case that XRP is a security. They're just letting the cloud of the lawsuit sit over the market and the damages occur, and taking no steps to provide any clarity on any digital asset. Now they're even backtracking. They're attempting to backtrack on Ethereum as well. Chairman Gensler's come out and said that, you know, only Bitcoin is really a commodity, non-security. But
that's something I'd like to get into coming up here, because we're going to have to wrap up shortly, as I've got another show to go, Jimmy. Not to cut you off, because it's brilliant what you're sharing. And, you know, if a rabbi comes out, I was married to a Jewish girl for a long time, and Jewish family, and I stayed in my spiritual sovereignty, and which was wonderful. But if a rabbi comes out at Hanukkah and blesses the table and said, this is all kosher, and off he goes, and then everybody sits down and eats a meal, and then a week later, or at Rosh Hashanah, all that time later, somebody comes out from the synagogue and says, oh, you know what? That was not kosher. That was just the rabbi's personal opinion, and gave his blessing. What kind of an uprising are you going to have, right? Massive. They're going to say, no, it was the rabbi. So here's what we kind of have here. I'm just trying to bring in a little humor. And we saw, as a result of that, it's a perfect example, though, isn't it? You know? Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai Adonai home. And then it's been a few years since I practiced my Hebrew, and all of a sudden it's kosher, and then somebody else comes out and says it wasn't. Oh my gosh, watch out. So yeah, is it a commodity? Is it a security? Is it not? You know, I'm acting on behalf of the agency. I'm not just disgusting multi-level corruption and fraud on behalf of the global markets. Not just the American people, but the American agency. So I shared here, we always like to do funny memes as well, Jimmy. You've seen a number of the interviews and the episodes here, as well as some supportive data as well that's out there in the mainstream. One of the memes I brought up was Lisa Simpson standing on stage. Anyone trying to disarm you is your enemy. We'd use that meme for the gun, Second Amendment thing, but it also includes this, financial disarmament, right? You've seen folks that over the last few years, what we've all believed and heard in forums and at digital asset, cryptocurrency conferences, you name it, that, you know, the Bitcoin, the Ethereum, there's, you know, all these other cryptocurrencies are untouchable. They're separate of the fiat system. They're separate of the banking system. They give us the sovereignty. They give us the independence. And boy, you know, Jimmy has really just kind of scratched the surface here on the Ethereum gate, the Bitcoin issue, where we are with XRP as a crypto and Ripple as its backbone, and how those two obviously intermingle with each other. And he's literally at the forefront, taking this to the DOJ, the SEC, and uncovering more information, basically to support us, we the people. You know, I see Ripple as a company and XRP as a cryptocurrency as a we the people type of a digital asset, right? We can literally build this back better. Ripple innovation, now tangled up with the administration. Your comment on this, Jimmy, I'm curious here in the next minute or two, on Forbes in this article that just came out yesterday as well. It says, too good to be true. Crypto is now braced for an SEC earthquake as the price of Bitcoin, Ethereum, BNB, XRP, Solana, Cardano, and Dogecoin surge. thoughts as to what effects this will have in the markets for those who still own Bitcoin and Ethereum? And then perhaps, now I know you're not an investment advisor and you don't play one on TV, but perhaps XRP, it's also a good time to start leveraging into it, because once the suppression comes off and the case wins,
the people of the XRP community know that Jimmy Valley and Val Hill are extremely bullish on the future of XRP. We do believe it's going to ultimately be the standard layer. The XRP ledger will be the layer one that all value reports to. And when we say all value, we mean all the money.
Right.
And it's hard to quantify what all the money is in the world, especially when you start to wrap your hands around all the derivatives and debt, a lot of which are not reported through formal sources. But these are big numbers, so we've in our proposals, which the people who know about Val Hill and know about what we've been up to in the market know that we've made proposals to the government to buy the XRP at $37,500 a token. So if you can pick it up for 30 cents or whatever it's trading at right now today, maybe closer to 40 cents, it may be the single greatest investment you've probably ever made. However, we have no crystal ball. We can't predict the future. And there's all this regulatory, and weaponization of the regulatory process by the legacy banking system that's at play here. So it's big deal.
Cool, mate. Well, thank you. And then when do you think it'll end from a legal standpoint? Again, this is just an opinion of a sovereign individual, not a legal opinion. When do you think that that case will come to a close, feel intuitively, and
so
maybe free on the open market again? Again, not a legal opinion.
There's two the summary judgment motions. This will be a case that's decided not by a jury, but it'll be decided by a judge. And so there will be summary judgment motions made by either side where the facts and the law will not be in dispute, and it'll be up to the judge to decide kind of how it's going to happen. That's all supposed to come together in November. I believe that we're going to have a market event. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that's going to be, but I believe they're going to have a market event within the next 4 weeks that is going to be so profound that they will have to come to the judge and beg for a resolution.
Even SEC?
Even the SEC, the federal government will basically have to get together and say, we've got to come together on this and get the clarity now, because this event will be so significant. You'll have to have the use of the asset.
What gives you an intuitive feeling that there's an event coming up? Does it have to do with China and the contagion effect of the massive debt crisis about to fall there, which is going to hit the markets? Is it because of that, or is there something else of that you can see?
It is that, and it's other things that we're aware of that are occurring in the business market, in the financial markets. The things you're describing, I would call the tide. You can see, or the wave. You can see it coming east to west. Russia has already returned to a gold-backed currency standard. There's the BRICS coalition is coming together, and they have a clear objective to return to an asset-backed currency world. The Middle East is starting to join them, and the West is being pretty, it's starting to break apart. The Western coalition, the NATO coalition, is starting to break apart. So you could see a Germany joining BRICS because winter's coming and they have no energy.
They have no gas, they have no energy. Same with so many others in the European Union.
It would be so profound. It would basically destroy the European Union. Or
overnight.
Overnight. It could be something like that. It could be a nuclear, event. That the activities of the West and Russia in and around Ukraine and all of the different, repercussions that's coming out of that conflict could bring about a nuclear event. or you could see some major trade deal struck in XRP instead of a national currency. And if that were to happen, I think basically the price of XRP would blow through the sale walls and start to go parabolic, and that could be one of the more positive things. A little less doomy and gloomy, but it would shock the very foundation of the financial system, and they'd have to wrap this up.
Most definitely. And as we wrap it up, and thank you for sharing that, mate, I appreciate it. Ranchers kind of say it best, don't they? Ranchers, rancher families, folks who just kind of know what hard labor means. And can you read that? Can you see that on the screen? That meme? Yeah. You know, the gas coming out of our cows ain't near as dangerous as the bullshit coming out of our politicians. You know, it kind of looks like a Sam Elliott figure there.
It does.
Yeah. Thank you to Sea of Mud for that meme. Well done. Thanks for putting that together. Well, Jimmy, thank you. Let's pick this up in a week or two, see what else is new in the case, XRP, Ripple, Ethereum, Gate, and your links are below for Valhill Capital and Astrolight Media. If you want to check into Jimmy and his venture capital firm, one of the patriots as faith-based, moving forward in spiritual sovereignty and helping bring this to the forefront to enrich the lives of everybody around the world by serving truth, which is the ultimate heroism. As a good friend, virtual soul friend, right? JFK said, I never had an opportunity in this lifetime to meet him because he wasn't around, or maybe he is. We'll see what happens as the future unfolds. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Brad Wozny, and thank you on behalf of the Bling Buddha and the Sovereign Soul Show program. Please like, subscribe, enable your notifications for all of the additional episodes that are coming up. Feel free to go to Rumble, which is the censorship-free video website, so you can see a number of the things that are posted there that have not made it to YouTube, and one of our videos that was banned by YouTube, even though we appealed the ban with absolute fact and truth, which included information from the FDA, the CDC, the American Medical Association, and Harvard, as well as the national NHS in the UK and Health Canada, but they don't care. This is big tech censorship, so that's why you need to stay up to date, because folks like us, we are the news now, bringing you the real data, and use your discernment, of course, with anything that we share. Thank you all. Many blessings to you. Have yourself a wonderful day, and we will speak to you all later on our next show. Thanks for joining us on the program, ladies and gentlemen. Please like, follow, subscribe, share this with 9 friends and family. And of course, if you enjoy our blinged Buddha firing red pills from his 9 mil, let us know.